This is about our constituents and all of our lives. Iowa, Nebraska, broad swaths of the Midwest are drowning right now, underwater.
During a House Financial Services Committee meeting discussing homelessness, the topic of the Green New Deal came up, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just completely laid into Republican bullshit. So I have two clips to show here. The first clip, you're going to see Republican Sean Duffy bring up the topic of the Green New Deal, and AOC responds, and it's just magnificent. Watch.
Over 8 members of this committee have signed on to the Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal is one that if you're a rich liberal from maybe New York or California, it sounds great because you can afford to retrofit your home or build a new home that has a zero emissions, that's energy efficient, affordable, and safe. So HUD did a study, and if you're going to retrofit all of the HUD houses to match the Green New Deal standard, which again, over 8 of you have signed on to, it would cost anywhere between $66.5 billion to $172 billion.
I am very encouraged by the sudden concern on the other side of the aisle about climate change, and it makes me feel as though our efforts have been effective, at the very least, in distancing between the dangerous strategy of climate denial, which we know is costing us lives, at least 3,000 Americans in Puerto Rico in Hurricane Maria. But aside from that, when we talk about the concern of the environment as an elitist concern, 1 year ago, I was waitressing in a taco shop in downtown Manhattan. I just got health insurance for the first time a month ago. This is not an elitist issue. This is a quality of life issue. You want to tell people that their concern and their desire for clean air and clean water is elitist? Tell that to the kids in the South Bronx, which are suffering from the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. Tell that to the families in Flint, whose kids have their blood is ascending in lead levels. Their brains are damaged for the rest of their lives. Call them elitist. You're telling them that those kids are trying to get on a plane to Davos? People are dying. They are dying. And the response across the other side of the aisle is to introduce an amendment 5 minutes before a hearing in a markup. This is serious. This should not be a partisan issue. This is about our constituents and all of our lives. Iowa, Nebraska, broad swaths of the Midwest are drowning right now, underwater. Farms, towns that will never be recovered and never come back. And we're here, and people are more concerned about helping oil companies than helping their own families? I don't think so. I don't think so. This is about our lives. This is about American lives. And it should not be partisan. Science should not be partisan. We are facing a national crisis. And if we do not ascend to that crisis, if we do not ascend to the levels in which we were threatened at the Great Depression, when we were threatened in World War II, if we do not ascend to those levels, if we tell the American public that we are more willing to invest and bail out big banks than we are willing to invest in our farmers and our urban families, then I don't know what we're here doing. I don't know what we're here doing. So I welcome the sudden enthusiasm to address the climate. And in that spirit, I want to reach my hand across the aisle and say, let's do a hearing. Let's do a hearing on environment and housing. And I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to bring forth and entertain that provision of the bill.
All right. What is there to say? AOC just completely whooped Duffy's ass. Now, to give you some context here, because Republicans only seem to care about spending money if it's going to help people. So if it's on healthcare, or if it's on climate change, or if it's on public transit, oh no, we can't possibly spend the money. Oh, it's way too much. No, we can't spend that money. The money's better spent on war. So, for example, a Brown University study shows that the war on terror has cost $5.6 trillion, and is likely to reach 6 or 7 trillion by 2020. Now, has this been a big topic of discussion amongst Republicans? Are they discussing, oh, we can't keep spending this money, nothing's getting better? The more we spend, the more terror is actually increasing. Actually, we spent all this money, and all it's led to is death and destruction and more of our money being spent outside of our borders instead of here at home. Is there any discussion at all from Republicans like Duffy about this? No. Or the media. The media isn't discussing this either. Again, spending money is only a topic of conversation if it's on healthcare or if it's on climate change, anything to help people. It's a big topic of conversation. But if it's about war, oh, the topic of cost doesn't even come up. Oh, who cares how much it costs? We got to kill people. It doesn't matter how much it costs. We got to kill people. How insane is this? The entire framing of this discussion is off. So to have someone like AOC who understands this, someone from the outside, has an outsider perspective, doesn't have a Washington insider perspective, comes from the outside, is a regular person, is now in Congress, is able to properly put a light on on the incredible bullshit that Republicans have been peddling, and not just Republicans, Democrats as well, have been peddling for years and years and years. It's hilarious that climate change policy is elitist, but what? Tax cuts for the rich? That's fine? It's perfectly okay. Tax cuts for the rich is not elitist at all, but spending money to prevent the effects of climate change, oh, that's somehow elitist. Are you fucking kidding me? So this is it's just completely disingenuous. And other issues like Social Security, cutting Social Security, how is that not elitist? People need their Social Security, yet you want to cut it. The people who don't need it are the wealthy people. That is obviously an elitist policy to cut Social Security. That's a Republican policy they're pushing. So understand, this entire debate is backwards. Now, let me show you one more clip here from AOC where she talks about the importance of taking preventative measures.
You know, we talk about cost. We're going to pay for this whether we pass a Green New Deal or not. Because as towns and cities go underwater, as wildfires ravage our communities, we are going to pay. And we are either going to decide if we're going to pay to react or if we're going to pay to be proactive. And what we know is that prevention, you know, when you spend less money on prevention, you can prevent a lot of that damage from happening in the first place. So it's not a question of whether we're going to spend the money, because I'm very sad to say that the government knew that climate change was real starting as far back as 1989 when NASA was reporting this. And the private sector knew way back in the 1970s. So we had until around the time I was born to address this issue. I wish it didn't have to cost so much, but I'm going to turn 30 this year, and for the entire 30 years of my lifetime, we did not make substantial investments to prepare our entire country for what we knew was coming. So now it's coming all up at the end. It's like when we live our whole lives and we don't eat healthily and we don't move and we pursue unhealthy activities. And then at the end of our lives, our healthcare costs are very high. We have the choice to lower the cost now, because I can tell you the cost of pursuing a Green New Deal will be far less than the cost of not passing it. And with respect to our brothers and sisters and neighbors that are in agriculture, bring them to the table. Let's hold hearings. Let's add provisions. Let's amend the legislation to accommodate for the just transition and for the encouragement of those industries to grow. And I would also encourage to my colleague on the other side of the aisle that thinks we're trying to ban cows to actually read the resolution and understand that there's nothing to that effect in the legislation. And not only that, but we're trying to invest in these communities and our agricultural workers so that they can enjoy prosperity into the next century.
So AOC here makes several great points, but one of the most important points she makes is that this is going to cost regardless, and it's going to cost more later than it will cost now. Preventative measures cost less than having to react to disasters later on. This is just a fact. So if you look at the science, you look at what's happened so far to the climate, you look at all the disasters that have occurred, that has cost more because these countries did not take any preventative measures beforehand. It's costing more now already because those steps were not taken before, and it's going to continue costing more and more. If you think the Green New Deal costs a lot of money now, what do you think is going to be the cost when Miami's underwater? What do you think is going to be the cost when all these coastal cities are underwater? What is the cost then? So for Republicans to, again, have this completely bullshit framing around cost and not recognize that it will cost more later, and to pretend that spending money on climate change policy is elitist when they're the ones pushing tax cuts for the rich. Give me a fucking break. So just thank God there is someone like AOC in Congress, and there's several of them. Rashida Tlaib was also on this panel. She also gave a great talk. There are now several Democrats, finally several Democrats in the party that are actually speaking to these issues and speaking to them with actual vigor and seriousness. And it has to continue because, again, look, it's not just the Republican Party that's pushing back on this. It's also Democrats, idiots like Joe Manchin, who is a conservative in a Democratic robe. Understand here, there needs to be an entire shift in the Democratic Party and in politics in general. And people need to start taking these issues seriously.